Well, hello there and welcome to the channel. Before you ask, no, I'm not about to umpire a cricket match, but I do have a question for you. Do you remember those glorious days of your summer holidays when you're walking around the beach fronts of the Mediterranean and the whole place is festooned in subtropical plants, in particular wonderful structural architectural agave? Well, you may well be asking yourself, is it possible for me to grow wonderful agaves right here at home in my garden here in the UK with our terrible, wet, cold, freezing, soggy, gloomy winters? Well, the answer is yes, you can. And I've got five for you to look at. But before we start, I have two things for you. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so by subscribing. It is absolutely free. And if you'd like to comment, do so. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to click on that like button because YouTube likes to see that thing going on. And the second thing is this, agave. That's an odd name. Where the flip did that come from? Well, that is indeed a very good question, and for those of you who like to know such things, agave is from the Greek meaning noble or illustrious, and it's from the fact that it produces such a humongously large flower spike every 20 to 30 years. Now, I know that the common name for agave is century plant because it is believed incorrectly that it flowers every 100 years, but this is not true. It flowers every 20 to 30 years depending on the variety, depending where it is grown. Anyway, to continue. Now, my first offering is the glorious Agave Americana plus two of its cultivars, and one of which I have just over here. Now, this one is the straight species and is the obvious choice really if you're looking at planting agave down here in the south of England, because this has been planted pretty much everywhere along the south coast and has been quite tough really for the past couple of decades. As you can see, it has this absolutely gorgeous blue-grey coloration, but if you look closer, you can see it has this kind of waxy, powdery coating on here, which is there to protect it from the full strength of the summer sun. When grown under optimal conditions, you can expect this plant to reach an overall height and spread of approximately 1.5 meters, and it really will tolerate a decent amount of cold, believed to go between about -7 and -8 degrees Celsius. The only thing it might struggle with is drainage. Agaves, all agaves really, you're gonna need to have excellent drainage. So when you're planting them out, make sure that you put in plenty of grit and gravel at the base and mix it in with your compost, and then over winter to try and keep the rain off it, you might want to put a little rain shelter. Now, I know all around here most people just leave them to their own devices and they survive year on year on year absolutely fine. But I'm just saying, if you want to keep it in its best condition, then drainage is excellent, and keep that rain off it if you can. Now, the two other colour forms that have received their award of garden merit from the Royal Horticultural Society are the Mediopicta, which in my experience, I mean, it is, I think, arguably the most beautiful of all the agaves, if not just the ones that are in the Americana species. But where I've grown it before, it just hasn't coped with the cold weather, just hasn't coped with any kind of damp in the soil. But if you can find it and you can give it the conditions that it requires, then that is a fantastic specimen to grow. And the other one is marginata. So very similar to the straight Americana, but it does have that wonderful yellow variegation and really is quite striking. And where I've grown this before, again, it survives the cold really, really well. -7 to -8 degrees Celsius. And again, plenty of drainage. I mean, it's exactly the same as the Americana. Good drainage, plenty of sun, and try and keep the rain off it, especially off the roots over the winter period. Now, for my second choice, it's a rather interesting species. It's Agave utahensis, otherwise pronounced as utahensis, but only by me. I just made that up, so don't mention that around other people. They won't know what you mean. But the utahensis is quite similar in a general sort of like look to the Americana, except that it's taller. It's about 2 meters tall. It's very spherical, very round, very round. It's very even sort of shape as well. The foliage is a very similar colour, that bluish green, that powdery blue, which I really like. But those sort of like leaves are thinner and they're longer, but really is quite lovely. And regarding cold hardiness, it is really cold hardy. It goes down to about -15, and we know it's a rock solid plant because again the RHS has given it its award of garden merit in its trials. So that means that opens it up really to being grown here in the UK further and further north where the winters get colder. But again, you've got to make sure that your drainage is absolutely spot on, and even though it can't withstand those really cold temperatures, it still needs to be protected against wet soil. So like I say, excellent drainage, maybe a rain shadow, or put a cover over it during the winter time. Now my third offering is a veritable jewel in the agave genus, I decided, and it is the superb agave parryi, or Perry's agave, otherwise known as the artichoke agave. Let me show you, take a look. Let me show you the one that I've got just here. Ooh, look at that for a little diamond of a plant. And I particularly love this because it's got this really lovely structure in the leaf. It's got those wide leaves, really thick dark spines, and quite vicious shark-like teeth on those, but absolutely wonderful. And this too, this is actually one of the hardiest, yes I'm saying one of the hardiest of all the agave you can buy. Let's put this down because it is quite heavy. Now, the agave parryi is one of the hardest cold-tolerant agaves that you can possibly buy. It is cold-hardy down to -20, yes, 20 degrees Celsius. And if you're an American, then you'll find that is cold-hardy down to -5 Fahrenheit. But not only that, it also has the RHS Award of Garden Merit because it has been tested in trials and proven to be an excellent choice. It will grow up to approximately 1 meter tall. Not that I've seen one that big. I think the tallest I've seen of one of those is probably about half a meter. I think we saw one of those down at the Marjora Gardens, one of my favourite cacti gardens down in Morocco. I would definitely say check that out if you're in the area. And that's kind of about it for the parryi, apart from the fact that once again it's got that blue-green kind of powdery colour to help protect it from the midday desert sun. But it really is a wonderful choice. It is quite small, but once again it needs that proper drainage. It needs to be kept dry over winter because although it will take those extremely cold temperatures, cold and wet, they will not mix with this plant. And choice number 4 is actually quite bad for that. But look, I'll show you anyway. Now, choice number 4 is Agave salmiana ferox, and it's like the bad boy of agaves because it grows to about 1.8 meters tall, and it has these very vicious, it's particularly long, I think 9 centimeter terminal spike. 9 centimeter terminal spike. Flipping it, that is dangerous. So it is a bit naughty. I've got one here that I can show you. This is my one, and I do particularly like the way these leaves splay out about 2/3 at the top here. Now, it is a fantastic looking plant, but this one does not have an award of garden merit despite it being extremely attractive and able to withstand winter temperatures down to -9. And there is a reason why this one does not perform as well as the others despite being able to take the cold, and that's because if it gets too wet at the end of the summer, you get these splits in the leaf. See that? It gets too wet and it will split. And the problem in this country is that, you know, you're looking at September, October, prior to bringing this sort of stuff in under cover. It's going to rain, and it has rained for like 3 weeks. And even though, see, it did used to grow this in the ground and it was fine, but you get this leaf damage on the bottom leaves, and this is what happens. You get it swells up because it gets too wet. You get this massive split down the leaf, and then and after that, let me show you. See that? Rots settle in and start to kill off the leaf, and that one's just as bad. Another split and a rotting, and this one's even worse. You know, it just gives up the ghost. Oh, look at that, disgusting. But the good news is that damage is localized, and once that leaf has finished being whatever the plant's doing to it, just rotting off, bringing in nutrition wherever it is, it tends to dry up and it just falls off, and then come the spring it starts again without those leaves and puts out new leaves. So I like it. I'm a big fan of it. I've grown it outside quite successfully. We'll take the cold, we'll even take a slight frost, but I've always covered it. I've always put a rain cover on it. So Yes, it's winter hardy. You do need to put some work on it. It's got a fantastic shape to it, so it's definitely worth one considering. And like I say, I really like it, and that's why it's in my top 5. Anyway, we're going to get to a good one. The one I'm going to talk to you about now at number 5, this is the one that really should be everywhere, and I will explain why. Well, I hope that's got your attention, because we are number 5, and number 5 we have an absolutely magnificent choice. That choice is the Agave havardiana, which I know sounds like an unforgivable curse from Harry Potter, but it is the genuine name. Now, this plant, it is like, you can consider it to be the Goldilocks plants of all agaves. It hits 3 nails right on the head, and they're the ones that you want it to. The first one is, it is cold tolerant down to minus 20 degrees Celsius. It has an award of garden merit from the RHS because it's proven its ability and qualities in their trials. And number three, this is the important one, of all the agaves I've spoken to you about today, it is one of the best for tolerating wet conditions over the winter. So it really is the plant of choice if you're looking to grow an agave here in the UK. Absolutely stunning. Once again, it has that silvery grey, slight greenish coloration to it. It's similar to the utahensis in its sort of habit, although the leaves and cells do have this sort of cupped kind of architecture within that leaf that sort of makes it distinct away from your regular kind of large, typical growing agaves. Grows about a metre. Goes to about a metre tall, so it's like half the size of an utahensis. Anyway, that is it. That is my top 5 agaves for cold, wet winters right here in the UK. But if you've got any other excellent choices of cold hardy, winter hardy agaves, then let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Anyway, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Right, before we go, I do have one more for your consideration, and that is the Agave montana, otherwise known as the mountain agave, and includes in the name an agave that grows on mountains. Is going to be subject to rather horrible winter conditions anyway. This plant is like the others. It grows to about 1.5 meters, got the same kind of, well, it's a darker green sort of coloration, but the thing with it is its hardiness is sort of minus 9, minus 10 degrees centigrade, which is great. That's going to be absolutely fine for most of the UK. But what the issue is whether it's hardy or not. It's hardy, you know, we know it's hardy, and it comes from the mountain environment, so obviously it's hardy, but for some reason you read it up, you check out the stats on it, and people are a little bit concerned that it's not hardy enough and suggest that really you could only keep it in a greenhouse. But I'm going to completely disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. Because I've seen this grown outside in London in Kew Gardens, and they've been absolutely fine. In fact, I'll go as far as to say magnificent specimens. Magnificent. Yes, I understand that London is a heat island and it doesn't get as cold as it does elsewhere in the UK, but it wasn't the cold I was worried about. It was the wet soils over the winter, and didn't have any protection, raised border, looked brilliant. So even though it's not in my top 5, because I can't say for absolutely for sure that this is a bulletproof plant, but I'll tell you what, it's one to keep your eye out for. Anyway, thank you for watching, and this is definitely the end, and I will see you in the next video. Assuming you're going to watch it, don't forget to subscribe.